Hello, students, and welcome to our subject, Nursing Research. Now, our first lesson will be an introduction to nursing research. When we say research, we have to understand, we can simply understand what it means when we look to its root words and prefix. When we say research, no, it comes from two words, one word and a prefix, re and search, which means to search again. But let me ask you, do you do research in everyday life? If you will recall, if you want to know when you are starting in this online learning mode, you try to find out what type of laptop would be best for you. You try to know whether this laptop is good for you and good for your studies. If that's the case, that is research. Because you search something that is known already and see whether it fits you. If you try to ask yourself, what will you eat during this lunchtime or in the dinner, you try to research what's the best food for you during that time. You know what food are available in your refrigerator, no? Food that has been cooked for you, you know what it is. But you don't know what you want to eat. So you do research because you try to search what is known and apply it to yourself. Okay? Now, that is called an everyday research. Okay? It is broadly similar to healthcare research, but they differ in formality. Okay? Because research is a systematic inquiry that uses disciplined methods to answer your questions or solve problems. Mainly, research follows the scientific method, no, in solving your problems, your everyday problems. And when you apply it to nursing, which makes it nursing research, this is a systematic inquiry designed to develop the knowledge about issues that are important to nurses. No? The scope of this is the nursing practice, the nursing education, nursing administration, and even community health nursing. Now, research is important in nursing because it develops our EBP. EBP stands for Evidence-Based Practice. I know you have heard this in your clinical duty, no? I know that some of your CIs have told you to read research so that you improve your evidence-based practice. Okay? Now, evidence-based practice, no, is a practice that is rooted in research evidence. Kaya hence the name evidence-based. Okay? Now, evidence-based practice is a shared decision-making model between practitioners, patients, and significant others based on best research evidence, clinical experience or expertise, and the healthcare preference of your patient. No? You choose EBP because you want to make your care effective, efficient, and uh, and cost efficient as well. Okay? Which results in positive outcomes for your clients that reflect professional accountability to clients. That's the main reason why we do research in nursing. Other reasons include the important research is important because number two, it provides us credibility and accountability. Okay, because it provides us with knowledge, with new knowledge. Okay, grounded on scientific method, the practice of nursing becomes more uh, sophisticated, making us more credible in our craft. Okay, research is also important, no, to make outcomes cost effective and even to contain the cost of care for our clients. And it's also important for documentation. Now, nurses have a vast role in research. Okay, from being indirect users or consumers of research to the far end, which is the one who are doing your their research itself. Now, research, your role as a nursing student in doing research can be classified in these actions, no? When I ask you to read journals, or your CIs or your teachers would ask you to read journals, that's a role in nursing research because you improve your knowledge with research evidence. Number two, you attend research presentations. That's also an action, okay, that improves, no, our research capabilities. We review and critique researches. When you say critique, you analyze the content. Okay? Being a research assistant, when someone asks you to become the research assistant, you also participate in the nursing research process and even research utilization. Okay? When you say research utilization, you transform what is written in your journals, okay, into your practice. Now, nursing research in the past, the present, and future can be summarized in these succeeding slides. Okay, the first nursing researcher, as you have known, is Florence Nightingale. Her notes of nursing made it possible to record what is or happening during her time. By taking down notes, she is taking down data. And by collecting data and interpreting it is a research process itself. Now, the results of her action, she was able to improve the conditions of her patients, no? And as well as develop her own environmental theory because she has data. Research is important by also because we want to develop a theory. Research is one way to develop a theory. Okay? So that's why Nightingale developed her data because she developed or she had notes in nursing. Okay? So in the next years, in 1900 to 1940, this nursing profession is starting to build up or is a startup profession. During this time, uh, nursing develops its own identity. So that's why the focus of nursing research is more on who they are, no? Answering the questions who they are, what they did, how other groups perceive them, and what type of person entered the profession. So more on the identity of the person or of the nurse. Okay? In 1950s to 1960s, nursing research accelerated. No? From mere asking who I am, okay, the nurses or the nurse researchers started addressing clinical nursing problems. Okay? So their research became practice-oriented. The research became practice-oriented. In the 1970s to 1990s, as more roles for nurses become available, as more diseases emerge, no? Global scenario, the focus of research became more uh, has expanded. It focused uh, on teaching, administration, and improvement of client care. And more attention is given to utilizing research finding in nursing practice, building up your evidence-based practice. In the 1900s or the 1990 rather, to year 2000, nursing research is guided by established research priorities. No? So during this time, there's an increase in low birth weight. No? They focus on low birth weight researches. During this time, there is an emerging HIV infection. Therefore, the focus of nursing research is more on HIV infection. There is also rising number of baby boomers who are getting older. So long-term care is also important. And research on symptom management and health promotion became prominent themes in doing nursing research. In the new millennia, in this year 2000 and onwards, there's heightened focus on evidence-based practice. There's increased emphasis on confirmation, replication of studies, integrative review, multidisciplinary collaboration, and outcomes research. No? The themes that have emerged in research topics include lifestyle modification. Kasi sa mga panahon na ito, there are a lot of people who became obese, who became who become sick with chronic illness, no? That is affected by lifestyle. Okay, managing chronic illness, no, to improve quality of life, reduce health disparities, and the recent pandemic, no, also has initiated a new theme for this new millennium, no, for the future of research, which is the development of nursing response for the COVID-19 pandemic. So those are the things that were priorities. As you have noticed, the need of the people are the primary motivation for doing nursing research. Okay? Not just nursing research, but other research as well. So if you put this in the context of nursing, whatever is the need of the nurses, whatever are the needs of the people, or whatever are the needs of the patients, would be the focus of nursing research. Okay? So when you find your topic, always try to ask yourself, what do you need, no, from a nurse? So when you choose your topic, it becomes more relevant and can be workable, and it is more relatable to our present situation. Now, ethics and research are important aspects in our in the ethics is necessary in the conduct of research, because there are a lot of experiments that were done in the past that were done unethically, meaning there were researches that has produced harm, that has capitalized on the vulnerability of other people. Okay, and sadly, there were no ethical guidelines on research on human people until there is a research scandal that has been discovered. No? The most prominent of them all, no? The most prominent research scandal would be the Nazi medical experiments. Okay, so the Nazi medical experiments during the World War has experimented on a lot of persons or prisoners of war, no? Yung mga POWs. They experimented on them, no, to get data without asking for consent. So after the war, the Nazi medical team were arrested and were tried in Nuremberg, where they stated that there are no ethical guidelines in the cure or in the conduct of research experiments on humans. So they did what they did because there were no guidelines telling them. So during that time, after the Nuremberg trial, they developed the Nuremberg Code, which has a primary concept. No? And what primary concept is that? The concept of informed consent. Okay? According to the Nuremberg Code, no one is allowed, no one should be forced into an experiment or any harmful treatment or any treatment that will impose harm, no? Minsan nga kahit hindi harmful yung experiment or yung procedure, kailangan mo pa rin ng consent, no? No one should be forced to a treatment or an experiment without his or her voluntary consent, no? So no one should be forced, no, into a particular experiment without them saying yes willingly and informedly. That's the IRSA's word. So dapat when you do experiment, you have to ask for consent, no, permission from a person, okay, to get there, to join into your research. All right. Now, another research scandal noteworthy is your Tuskegee syphilis research. Now, Tuskegee syphilis research is the longest-running research experiment among African-American males, no, who had syphilis. Well, initially, Tuskegee syphilis trial is research with good intention. They wanted to cure, no? They wanted to cure these African American who were afflicted with syphilis. However, this happened in the U.S. However, these students, or rather these students, these African American males were subjected, no, to a different protocol, no, or to a different research method. Kasi the the American government, okay, during this time, reduced the funding onto sketchy syphilis research. Okay, so they decided to continue with it, but they have to modify, no, the research method. This time, their objective was to know whether syphilis, no, what will happen to a person if syphilis becomes untreated. Okay? So, it's okay, no? Okay lang naman kung hindi ma-treat, no? If they do not treat syphilis, if there are no treatment available during that time. However, Tuskegee syphilis trial happened in the 1940s to 1970s. Okay, during this time, penicillin is already available, which is a cure for syphilis. Okay, the penicillin can be used to cure syphilis. So the researcher, with the goal of knowing the natural course of untreated syphilis, no, the researcher proceeded, no, with the objective of the modified trial. Okay, so they deceived African Americans. They tell them that with syphilis, they tell them that their condition is bad blood. Okay, and they tell that they had bad blood and that their condition is incurable. That in itself is deception, because at the context of the time, syphilis can be cured and it is not treatable. So they deceived the African Americans to join in the Tuskegee syphilis research, and then they allowed that person to die without an intervention. So that is unethical in itself, okay? Because you deceive the person of the rightful information that should be given to them. Okay? So that also led to the development of the second code of ethics for healthcare, for health research, which is your Declaration of Helsinki. No? It says that when you do medical research, you have to get their consent. That's number one. And number two, they should be afforded with the care, the proper care. Now, when you subject them to an experimental treatment, no, if there are one. Okay. Now, there are some ethical dilemmas for you as researcher that you must notice. Sometimes our research goal, no, crosses the rights of our participants. Always remember that the rights of our participants, the rights of our subjects, human subjects, are greater than the goals that we want to achieve. So therefore, we need to prioritize the rights of our patients, the rights of our participants. Okay? So here are some ethical principles that you need to understand, and I know you're familiar with them. Okay? The principle of beneficence, freedom from harm, freedom from exploitation, no? The principle of justice, which involves the right to privacy, the right to anonymity and confidentiality, the right to fair treatment, no? When we say the right to fair treatment, everyone has the right, no, to the proper treatment. Kasi if you want to experiment on new treatment, that's not the correct treatment for a particular disease. So if that new treatment fails, you have to give that person, your subject, with the fair treatment, no? With the correct treatment. So therefore, that's the right of the patient or of the participant to fair treatment. Okay? Respect for human rights and dignity, which involves the right to self-determination or their ability to decide for themselves, and the right to full disclosure. Now, it is also important to have an informed consent, for your patient, from your patient, which involves giving them essential information, no? Making sure they understand what you have said, no? Ibig sabihin, dapat when you give them health teaching or information about your research, and they do not understand your explanation, you have to dumb it down. Okay, you have to simplify it in terms that are understandable to their language. Okay, hindi lang layman's term, because when you say layman's term, there's only a certain language na mararating, no? You have to make it, no, understandable at their own level and with their own language. Okay? Informed consent also involves competency to give consent, or their ability to say yes or no. Okay? When that person has the ability to give consent, it means that they are legally capable, above 18 years of age. Okay? And they are they are mentally sound, no, to listen to your explanation. So that's your competency to give consent. And when we say they have the ability to give their consent voluntarily, it means that they have to do it, no, with their own willingness. They are not forced. They were given choices. All right. So that's how you get, or that's the the main dimensions of an informed consent. Okay? So here are the elements of your informed consent. Okay? You should you should you should state, no, your identity and credentials, no? And you should tell them how did you select the people. You should also tell them the purpose of your study and your procedures, and the potential risk and benefits that you have or that your study may have for them. Also make clear to them if there are any compensation or stipend that will be given. And ensure anonymity and confidentiality. When we say anonymity, you remove any personal identification from their own data. So you anonymize their data, meaning you cannot trace their identity, no, once you have collected the data from them. You cannot trace their identity. This is to protect them from any undue stress, okay, or any form of exploitation from them. You should also give them the right to refuse or to participate or to withdraw without any penalty. Hindi mo po pwedeng sabihin sa kanila na, hindi ka pwedeng umalis sa ating research study dahil hindi pa tapos. No, you cannot do that. Okay? They can be allowed, no, to withdraw anytime, okay, as they wish. All right? And also to answer all questions that they have, okay, and means of obtaining study result. Now, Data Privacy Act always always require you, no, to get written consent. Okay? Written consent. So, hindi pwede na verbal consent lang na umuo sa'yo, kailangan may pirma. Eh sir, paano yun kapag if our data collection still falls on a pandemic? No? We cannot collect written consent. Okay? There's the Data Privacy Act would tell you there should be an obvious sign of consent, no? An obvious sign of consent. Okay? So when you do your Google Forms or your informed consent, no, via Google Forms, you can you can set a question that that states that they agree, and make it a checkbox so that their consent will still be recorded. Okay? Now, there are other ethical issues in nursing research, no? The issue of stipend and incentives. Well, giving less stipend or giving no incentives is unethical, because the person is spending their time, their resources with you. When they participate in the research, no, the client should not be inconvenienced, or the participant should not be inconvenienced by your research, no? In terms of financial aspect, in terms of socio-economic aspect, and the likes, no? So you have to provide them with stipend or allowance, or even give them incentive. Okay? However, there's a problem with too much stipend and too much incentive. Okay? Why? Because there can be manipulation, no, of their response if their stipend is too high. No? For example, you give a person a stipend that is beyond his means, no, his living means. Okay? Definitely, that person will give a favorable response for you. So that will alter the truthfulness of your data. Okay? That's the problem with increasing your stipend too much. So the answer is, dapat sapat lang. Okay? So you should give a stipend that is within the living mean of the person. Kung ano yung kanyang lifestyle, or kung ano yung kanyang daily wage, yung araw na kinikita niya sa isang araw, yun yung tatapatan mo ng stipend. Okay? If if it's a whole day participation. Okay? So kung hindi naman, dapat commensurate doon sa kanyang effort. Right? Now, sometimes we employ concealment, no? Concealment in data collection, or what you call your covert data collection, because we want to minimize the consciousness of a person when we observe them. Kasi when a person is conscious, no, and they know that they are being observed, they might act differently. And when they act differently, no, our data is altered. So therefore, we need to conceal our data collection. But there's a problem with concealment. We cannot get consent from these people, no? So the best way to go around with covert data collection is to collect first the data, and after collecting the data or the observation, go to the person that is who is being observed, ask for his or her consent. If the person agreed, no, to join the research, then that's the time that you add your data to your aggregate. Okay? Concealment, no, sometimes can be achieved by this deception. However, deception in itself, no, defeats the purpose of informed consent. So you do not do deception when you collect research data. All right? Next, when you do research, sometimes you evoke, no, repressed feelings, repressed emotions, repressed memories, repressed or suppressed. Okay? For example, you ask an elderly what was her quality of life in her state now. And then she recalled a very traumatic experience that she had. And she began crying. So it is unethical, no, to just collect that data and leave the person in shambles, no, to leave that person in distress. That's wrong. That's unethical. All right. So you have to provide debriefing. Okay? You have to provide debriefing. If you're not capable of debriefing psychologically, you may also want to seek the help of psychologists, no, to provide debriefing to your distressed clients. Sometimes in the course of your data collection, you encounter incidences of abuse, ano? Incidences of violence against women. Okay? And you know that one of your respondent is being abused by his or her by her partner. So what will you do? Will you leave that person, no, in her current state, no, even if you know it? The answer is no. You should not leave that person in that state, because you already have the knowledge of that particular uh, crime. You should refer these incidents to the police or to the proper authorities. All right? You should never leave them alone, because that is unethical. Other issues involve vulnerable groups. No? Vulnerable groups are those people that will receive the maximum possible harm, no? When you perform your research. Okay, these are your children, your mentally or physically disabled, those who are terminally ill, those who are institutionalized, ibig sabihin yung mga preso, or those who are being entrusted, no, doon sa mga institutions of care, like yung mga Hospicio de San Jose and the likes. And even pregnant women or the pregnant, those are vulnerable people or vulnerable groups. Okay? Pumapasok din sa vulnerable groups yung assent and consent. Now, when we say assent, this is the verbal agreement, no, of a person to your research study. Okay? Verbal agreement. While dissent is the verbal non-agreement or disagreement. Okay? Children, most especially yung mga toddlers, preschoolers, are the primary subject of assent and dissent. Whenever you perform a research on a let's say 5-year-old child, even if the parent consented, but the child exhibited dissent, in what way? Nag-iiyak, no? Crying, being aggressive against you, okay? That's a sign of dissent. And that's the sign, that's more than enough for you to stop your data collection because the child dissents. Okay? If there is consent from the parent and there is assent, no, from your 5-year-old subject, then that's the time that you will proceed with your data collection. But if the child assents, but the parent, no, does not agree with your procedure, do not proceed as well. Okay? Huwag pong mag-proceed. Alright? Next, animal studies also involve ethical handling, no, of animals in research. Okay? And also, other issues in nursing research is yung research misconduct itself. No, yung dishonesty and fraud. It can be in a form of fabrication. When we say fabrication, you create data even if you did not do data collection. No, that's wrong because you did not do any data collection. You did not do a rigorous method to collect your data. So that's a research misconduct. All right? Falsification is the alteration of your data. This is wrong because it defeats the purpose of a truthful, no, of a truthful research evidence, and as well as plagiarism, which is copying others people's work as if it is your own. All right. So the practice of research also revolves mainly, no, on the principle of veracity or truth telling, right? Okay. Now, when we say evidence-based research, with the evidence-based practice, rather, we source our evidences, no, from a different source. No? Kinukuha natin yon, we get our sources, no, of evidence from different types. It could be the form of tradition and authority. No? The tradition refers to the usual ways or mga nakagawian na ginagawa ninyo. Okay? So when you say I've been doing this research or I've been doing this practice ever since, no, I was here in the unit, okay? That refers to your tradition and authority. The second source of evidence for nursing practice is your clinical experience and situation. Okay, this is more scientific, a little bit scientific because it refers to your empirical experience or your empirical data. The things that you observe, no, you get this pieces of information and refer to it as evidence. All right. Evidence can also be sourced by trial and error. As the name suggests, trial and error is the experimentation until you get the correct evidence. Well, it may work for non-life-threatening situation. But if it involves the life of people, trial and error should not be used as a source of evidence for nursing practice. Assembled information is a source of evidence where you try to piece out information from different practices and apply it to your own context. No? This one is can be a good source of information because you try to validate a certain perspective from different professions. Okay, so you brought your information is broadened. No, your decision making process is expanded because you get from different sources. All right, and that discipline and the best source of evidence will always be your disciplined research, the one that follows the scientific method. Now, nursing research has the following purpose. Number one, to identify and describe. No? Identify what needs to be solved, what needs to be done. Okay? Nursing research is also important for exploration, even explanation, or the best of it is prediction and control. Now, the levels of research can be classified according to its purpose. If your research wants to answer what is or what are, this can be a level 1 research. All right? This is a level 1 research because you're just exploring it and describing it. Okay, so exploratory researches are level 1 researches. Descriptive researches are level 1 researches because you're just describing what is or what are all about a certain phenomena. If you try to correlate, if you try to find out the relationship between two variables or among groups, then you are performing a level 2 research. So if you try to find out the relationship between height and weight, then it is a level 2 research. If you try to find correlation between variables, that's a correlational research. But if you do a research to compare the results of groups or to compare two sets of results, then it is a comparative research. Okay? Correlational and comparative researches are level 2 researches. All right? And lastly, level 3 researches are concerned with the effects on difference of variables among groups. It could be in the form of quasi-experimental. Quasi means like. In our future sessions, we will differentiate this quasi-experimental and experimental. But the essence of level 3 researches are those that compare their researches or compare the effects and differences of variables among groups. Research can also be used, can be also classified according to their types. When we say basic research, this is research done for the sake of answering a certain question. Like, for example, a survey of the top 3 presidential bonds. Okay? But if you try to solve a problem, like nursing research, you're doing an applied research. When you try to solve a problem to improve a certain practice, then that is applied research. When we say laboratory research, this is a research, as the word would tell you, this research is done in the laboratory. But what is most notable in laboratory research? Laboratory research despite the fact that it's done in laboratory, is a research that is full of controls. No? To do it, we want to do a laboratory research because we want to minimize extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are variables that are no, that are having effects or have effects on the outcome variable, but do not have or is not actually our variable of interest. Hindi natin siya pinag-aaralan, pero nakaka-affect siya doon sa outcome, which would alter the truthfulness of your data. Okay? Laboratory research. Now, field research is done on a naturalistic setting. No? Naturalistic setting. Now, field research are done in naturalistic setting, and the effect of extraneous variables are done or are allowed, no, to influence our outcome. Okay? The next type of research is your retrospective research. When we say retrospective research, these are researches done to review the development of a certain variable or outcome. For example, no, the knowledge on smoking, no, being a cause of cancer, no, was achieved by retrospective research. Okay? So those who have lung cancer were reviewed. No? Their history were traced back, no, using retrospective research design to know that smoking, no, is the primary cause of it. Okay? So retrospective is a backward research. You trace back the development of a certain outcome to know whether a certain variable causes a certain outcome. Okay? When we say prospective research, this is a research done in forward time, as time goes forward. No, you do not do reviewing, you do not go back to its development, but rather, okay, you observe a certain variable if it will, no, if it will cause a certain outcome throughout time, as time goes on. All right. So that's the difference between retrospective and prospective research. When we say cross-sectional research, no, these are researches that are done only at a single point of time. Okay, to be more specific, data collection is only done only at a specific period of time. For example, I do a research, no, on your feelings about online learning, and I just get, no, just one, I just collect one data or your data at one point in time. That's a cross-sectional research. However, if you do a longitudinal research, you collect data for a longer period of time. So if I say, what's your coping strategy during this online learning mode, no, for the whole semester, and I collected data every week of the first semester, then that is a longitudinal research. All right? You collect data for a longer period of time. Okay? Now, when we say experimental research, these are researches wherein you introduce an intervention. Okay? Let's say, for example, you want to know whether a single cream, no, wound healing cream, would improve wound healing of a patient post-appendectomy. Okay? So that's one. No? That's one type of experimental research. You introduce a cream, no, to induce wound healing. There is an intervention or a natural process that is occurring. So that is an experiment because you introduced something. However, if you have non-experimental research, you do not introduce anything. Okay? So as for our example earlier, if you notice or if you observe the wound healing of post-appendectomy patients, then you're doing a non-experimental research. No? So there's no intervention in your study. All right? Qualitative and quantitative research differ mainly on the type, no, of data that you are handling. They differ because qualitative data processes narrative information, while quantitative data research, no, processes numeric data. No? Qualitative narratives, no? Not quantitative, you deal with numbers. But more on the difference in terms of data process is the paradigm, no, that these researches undertake. Okay? Qualitative researches are naturalistic in paradigm because they consider multiple truths of a certain phenomena. Qualitative researches go on an inductive method of thinking, no? Inductive reasoning, because you get data from a specific point, no, from specific sources, and then make a generalization out of it, from specific to general. While quantitative researches goes on a positivist paradigm, meaning it tests a theory from general, no, that is general in scope, and apply it to a specific situation. That is a form of deductive thinking that is applied in quantitative researches. Okay, quantitative researches are positivist paradigm because they expect something out of a phenomena, because they root their researches to theories. No? They root it to theories. And when they root it to theories, they expect something out of what is happening in their research. So that's why it's positivist paradigm. No? Qualitative researches do not anchor their studies, no, to theories because they are naturalistic in nature. They do not want, no, to limit their observations based on the theories, that were developed previously, because they believe that there are still other truths that are applicable in their research. All right? Now, here are the steps in the research process. Now, for a quantitative study, you take on a conceptual phase. No? In this phase, you try to formulate and delimit the problem, review the literature, undertake clinical field work. Ibig sabihin, you try to look, no, to look for certain evidences, no, before you start with your problem. Fourth, you define your conceptual definition and you formulate your hypothesis. The next is to design and plan your phase. You select a research design, develop protocols for interventions, identify the population, design the sampling plan, specify methods, develop methods, and finalize your research plan. Then after you have designed your research, you collect your data. This is your empirical phase. And after collecting your data, you prepare your data for analysis. When you analyze your data, you enter the analytic phase. No? And when you analyze your data, it's important that you interpret it in light of the researches that you have reviewed and even the theories that you have anchored your study to. Next, the last phase, no, of quantitative research is your dissemination phase, which is to communicate your findings and utilize the research evidence in practice. Qualitative research take also the steps, no, the steps of quantitative research, but then on a different way. Now, instead of doing or attaching your study to a theory, we do not do that in qualitative study. Sabi nga natin kanina, qualitative researches are naturalistic, in nature or in paradigm. Therefore, we do not want to limit our perspective only to a theory. So this research does not require a theory or a theory to to guide, no, its design. Okay? So after you have planned and designed your qualitative study, you will have to conduct it, okay? And you have to collect data and evaluate its trustworthiness and interpret your data. And lastly is to seek dissemination of your findings. Now, the first step in doing a research is to develop your research problem. No? To develop your research problem, you look for sources. Okay? A primary source of your research problem is for your practice, experience, or interest. Okay? My primary reminder to my students when you do research is that what interests you. Because if you're not interested in doing your research problem with your research topic, then you will not finish this paper. So first and foremost, you should be interested in doing your research. Other sources for your research problem would be literature review. No? Literature review. Finding what is known about, no? And what should be known more about your topic. Okay? Theories, sabi ko nga, can be tested. And these theories can be set as your research problem. No? Testing a theory can be also a source of your research problem. Okay? Fourth, it can be an idea from an external source. It could be an idea of your advisor. It could be an idea from Adamson University or Chinese General Hospital Colleges. Okay? It can be an idea from DOH, okay, or other agencies that are concerned with research. Okay, so it can be social issues and previous researches. So after determining your problem, you have to consider its feasibility. It could be either the feasibility can be determined by time, money, availability of research participants, ethical considerations, facilities and equipment, and experience and qualification of the researcher. Okay? So here are some examples of research topic, problem, and purpose. You can use this guide for the next activity that I will assign to you. All right? Or the activity that you will see in your module. Okay? Just make sure that your research question should be clear and simple. It should be an interrogative sentence because it is a question, and include the study key variables, no? Dependent, independent variables, relationship among variables, population under study, and indicate the empirical data to be gathered. Okay? So here are some problem statement formats that you may follow. No, you can access it in your lecture notes that you can download from your modules. Okay? So your questions should be worded, no, using the PICO format, PICO. It should contain the population of your interest. It should contain the intervention or exposure, no, and it should contain comparison or alternative intervention and the outcome. So let's take this example. Is music more effective than acupressure in reducing agitation in patients with dementia? When we look at this, we see that the music, which is the intervention, yung inintroduce mo na treatment, no, more effective than acupressure, no? More effective than acupressure, which means the comparison, no, or alternative intervention, which is your acupressure, in reducing agitation, no, which is the outcome, yung pag-reduce ng agitation in patients with dementia, which is the population. So it contains the PICO, the population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. All right? So I leave this exercise for you to help you get a feel of what are these elements of a research question. Okay? So that ends my lecture for this week. I hope that you will access our module, download the files, okay? and do the activity that is in your module. Okay? So if you have any questions, I will set, no? You can send me a direct message in my Facebook account. And also, if you have any, if you don't have anything to do, you may subscribe on my YouTube channel for any, okay, for any updates on my lecture. With that, bye. See you next time.